Hey everybody, this is Tony, the Geeky Agent from Hamilton here, just coming to you live on this cold and snowy Wednesday. Just speaking with Tamer Fahmi, who's going to be running for the CREA Board of Directors, representing the Ontario region. He is a longtime member, over 40 years here at the Realtors Association of Hamilton-Burlington, deeply involved with both all the associations, actually from CREA to AREA to RAB, and in the community surrounding us here in Hamilton-Burlington, both in the charitable organizations, as part of the boards here in Hamilton. I first met Tamer probably about 5.5 years ago, I believe, while we're sitting on the Government Relations Committee here for the Realtors Association of Hamilton-Burlington, and Tamer was chair of that committee. So he had already had a long career in real estate before little old me decided to come along and join the party. And he's a great guy. He's decided to spend some time with us this afternoon, just talking about what he hopes to accomplish as a CREA director, why now is a good time, and what he sees sort of as the future of organized real estate in Canada, and how it's going to impact realtors, how it's going to impact homeowners, and a whole bunch of other topics. So without further ado, I'm going to unmute his mic so he can actually speak. That's always a good thing. And there he is. We've both been involved with our associations. You obviously much longer than I have. I've only been a member of the association for about 6 years. So give us a little bit of your background. I know you started, I think, back in '76, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, way back in 1976. I think in those days MLS used to be carved on a tablet, not the tablet that we know today. No. I've seen a lot of change, a lot of evolution, a lot of progress, a lot of growth in our business, in our market areas, of course, in our communities as well. Before we get started, anybody that has known me for a number of years, they know my passion for soccer. So I gotta say this. TFC, congratulations. For those that were watching the game yesterday, that was an historical event. For the first time, they advanced to the semifinals. I'm very proud of them. Great team. I'm a great supporter. I've been watching them for 10 years, and they've come a long way as well. So I just wanted to share that with those that are soccer fans there that may be watching.
Absolutely. We're all really proud. I'm a huge, long-time European soccer fan, and then when it came to North America again, and sort of got big again, I'm crazy for it. I love it and stuff like that. So that's awesome. So getting back to your background here again, you started back in the '70s as far as real estate is concerned, and you've had a long history of being involved with the different associations and stuff. So what are some of the highlights, I guess, of your career since then in terms of being involved with CREA and AREA and RAB and all these kind of different levels of organized real estate in Canada?
Well, Tony, it seems like history continues to repeat itself. There are always issues that we need to address. A lot of it are influenced by legislation and, of course, market conditions and media in a lot of cases. They're paying a lot of attention to what happens in real estate. And that gets the eyeballs turning to the way we operate our businesses, the way the businesses run, the way the transaction takes place, particularly in some of the fast-paced markets that we've recently experienced in major cities all across the country. My initial involvement, the real estate business has been very generous to my family and myself. And after the first 12 years of being in the business, I was at an AGM for my board, and the president walking out to the parking lot with me inspired me to consider running for the board. This is no different than what happens to a lot of the leaders that we see in today's environment. They're always asked to step forward when you see someone that can contribute positively to the associations. And ever since then, I stepped forward at my local board level, and year in, year out, here I am. I've done my tenure as president of my local board, the Ontario Real Estate Association. I served on the Real Estate Council of Ontario. And then when I stepped away from the real estate world of this, I still had a thirst to help. And of course, I contributed again locally at my chamber, Tourism Burlington, variety of different work groups that the city of Burlington was looking for experts on real estate to help with. So to continue to contribute has been, in my DNA. It's something that organizations are not going to run automatically on cruise control. They need contribution of people that are experts in the field, that are in the trenches, listing, selling real estate, to help them create and develop the policy that is going to be important for the associations to run efficiently and help their members succeed in their businesses. Well, I chaired the Burlington Chamber of Commerce, and that was a very similar role that I had in organized real estate when I was serving there as a director for a number of years. Eventually became chair. When you're chair, you represent the local chamber, kind of similar to a real estate board, at both the national and provincial levels as well. So I've attended a couple of conferences. You speak to politicians, and ironically, they're the same politicians that I spoke with my real estate tongue at the same time, addressing issues for more businesses. And the Chamber of Commerce is a significant hub to operate businesses in every community across the country as well. And having that link with the real estate typically being mostly a small business, if you will, in any community, it allowed me to continue on with similar issues that help businesses being more profitable and to raise the awareness by politicians to make sure that policy does not infringe upon their success and growth.
Absolutely. And then, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say tourism. Burlington was another area that I volunteered at, and we're realtors. We're all about bringing people to our communities. So tourism is kind of our second hat in a sense in what we're doing. When you have an out-of-town potential buyer coming in, the first thing you do is you show them around what the community has to offer, and then they decide on your community. The next step is to find them the home. So I found that to be another good fit that I was involved with. And I served as a director. Eventually, I served as the chair for 1 year. That was 2-3 years ago.
Right. No, excellent. And I know that you've been involved as far as CREA is concerned. I mean, just going over your resume, which I will post a link to it later on and post the graphic as well. But you're involved in the CREA task force to help create the code of ethics back in 04-05. You also served as a REA president back in 2005 as well, and as a director for many years. You're past president on the RAB board here in Hamilton, Burlington. So you've been involved, at high levels within the different associations for a very long time. So I think, like you said, it's not surprising to me, like when we first had this discussion and you mentioned to me that you were running to be a director for CREA. It was sort of of course you would, because that's not something that really surprised me at all, because you are the type of person that is involved quite heavily, I would say, as compared to the average realtor, in terms of being just involved with the association, both in a governance type positions and in sort of the charitable side as well. Because I know you've participated with the Realtors Care Foundation a lot. You're a lifetime member of the board here in Hamilton, and you've participated with the Christmas Tree of Hope and all these other kind of initiatives that we've had, just generally being involved in the community in general. So that doesn't surprise me that you'd want to be involved again at CREA. But as far as you're concerned, like, why is now the right time for you to sort of take this more advanced role within CREA again? Like, what do you foresee coming down the pipe as far as realtors are concerned, in terms of, I guess, how is the current political climate, how is the markets and all these kind of things? How do you see them impacting the profession of realtors in general? And I guess in a wider sense as well as Canadian home ownership and all that kind of stuff, because we've seen quite a few changes politically here in Ontario and nationally over the past few years. Specifically, like, there's a big focus obviously on the real estate industry. It is one of the economic drivers of the country, and everybody needs a house at some point. So it is something that people are just intimately interested in. So why, like I said, why now, and what do you see as, I guess, the challenges that you'd like to address if you become the director for Ontario with CREA?
Thank you for that question. That's a really good question. It's loaded, and I have about 3 pages to answer that, but I will.
Oh, absolutely. We got time. It's okay.
Well, over the last few years, one of the things that I can't help but notice is I've continued to travel south of the border and hear what they're saying about the real estate markets, both at the National Association of Realtors conferences I've attended, just to keep ourselves in the loop of what's going on south of the border. Because eventually what happens south of the border finds its way across the border here. So one of the many comments that we've heard is how envious the U.S. market is of the Canadian real estate market and the Canadian Real Estate Association. They look at us as we have it figured out. And indeed we do. We have been very successful. We've been, and I think a lot of it has to do with our lobbying efforts in general and getting the politicians to hear our points of view. When I hear that, and then I'm looking at a number of different things that have taken place, and it's all driven by the booming markets that we've experienced over the last 2 to 5 years, I would say. But it really came to a boil in the last 2 or 3 years when we saw legislation changing and it's usually in a reaction to media coverage of some situation that happens. And immediately, policy has to change to address that situation with a baseball bat to paint all realtors with the same brush. And I think the first thing that we've seen is when the market was as active as it was in the West, and then the 15% non-residence tax was implemented to calm things down. I understand the thoughts and the policies that legislators will bring into effect when situations like that happen, but that's not necessarily the solution. And I don't believe it is still the solution, because I think it is being revisited and being looked at from the information that we read. So that was one of the monumental steps that started the ball rolling. And then we've seen challenges with banning, they call it dual agent, or double ending rather.
Multiple representation,
which is totally confused with multiple representation. Double ending is not necessarily representing both sides in the same transaction, but one individual involved in both sides of the transaction. Totally overlooking the fact that there are different creation of relationships that you can have, whether it's a customer or clients. Legislators don't know that, and they don't get their heads wrapped around that. So when policy is made, it's like, you can't do that. Well, guess what? They're also revisiting that situation in BC. And of course, what happens in one province, in one major center, it immediately is looked upon by other parties across the country. And I say that because my involvement at RECO, at the Real Estate Council of Ontario a few years ago, there is something called ARILO. And when a regulator in one jurisdiction is thinking or doing something about the real estate industry, all other regulators are listening. So this eventually will overflow. So our involvement nationally is by osmosis needs to be in contrast with the provincial activities that are happening in each province across the country. So what we've noticed, and fortunately for Ontario, we have some very strong lobbying efforts with the GR committee at the Ontario Real Estate Association. They've had tremendous successes over the last few years with a number of issues. That's the kind of advocacy and help that realtors need for somebody to be a spokesperson for them, to help them run the business in a proper fashion. And at the same time, we're always, conscientious of consumer protection ourselves, because our business naturally helps us grow when we serve the client right and we seek referrals and repeat business. So conscientiously, we are very responsible individuals in the transaction. So with all of these legislations that are happening, and then of course with the market being as busy as it is, we've seen 2 stress tests that were implemented, one for the first-time buyer, curb the market activity. It worked a little bit for a few months, and then things went nuts again, as we all know. And then the affordable housing initiatives that came with 16 recommendations. And they affected so many things that affect our consumers and clients and ourselves in terms of landlord-tenant board legislation that's being amended and day-to-day with different implications that affect the real estate industry in general, first of all, and then the clients and the people that we serve. We have seen the stress test coming into play again for all buyers. Not just the first-time buyers, and that was another a step to calm down the real estate market. Right now, we have what I consider a very healthy real estate environment that we're all working in. I think it's balancing. I think it would have done that probably by consumer behavior more so than anything else, because it got to at one point in time. This time last year, I don't think we would afford the time to do this interview for a whole hour. So I'm sure you would experience that. So it's those reasons that I thought somebody needs to speak to, on behalf of the realtors in Canada. And what I've done locally, at municipal level, at provincial level, and my connections with my federal representatives here in Burlington and relationships that I've developed over the years, it's a natural fit for me to step forward, see what else I can do to help, particularly in what decisions that may be coming down the pipe as far as how our business is going to react to some of the legislation changes that we keep seeing coming down the pike.
Absolutely. And I think just being involved locally and having those connections, having the relationships basically allows you to keep those channels of communication open with the different levels of government and locally here, and that filters up federally as well, right? That allows you to represent us in that way. What do you see, I guess, or do you see something coming down the pipe that represents the larger challenge for us? Like, what are maybe the one or two or three, whatever issues that you see as being the most important going forward? You talked about, like, us specifically in Ontario looking at things like multiple representation or double ending and that sort of thing. Do you see things at the federal level? Because, I mean, CREA is at next level, right? So, I mean, at CREA, we're looking at provincial issues and that sort of thing. Once we get into CREA, now we're looking at more federal type based issues. So we see changes happening there as well, looking at the code of conduct and redoing an Ontario REBA. And again, they're just sort of filtering right across provinces, as you mentioned. Nothing happens in one province that isn't noticed by all the others, that sort of thing. So I guess if you had one or two sort of key issues that you think might be impacting realtors that really need to be addressed, or you see coming down the pipe, what would they be? Like, or what are you thinking?
It's, well, definitely one thing that I don't know, a number of our members must have had similar experiences as I have recently with the marijuana legislation is going to have a serious impact on how we're going to conduct our business. Disclosure is a significant part of what we need to be made aware of. I do know that OREA is working on a position that helps bring it to the attention of the provincial politicians and legislators. It is something that is nationwide. Each province has taken a different stance than another, necessarily allowing, growing up to so many plants in a household. Are we going to be the police that enforces how many plants are there, and does it make it legal or illegal? I think at the end of the day, when we sell a property, whether there was 1 or 10 plants, and a neighbor is aware of it, that our client, the buyer that moves in, is going to be informed of that. Where do we stand with that? Where is our our fiduciary responsibility is to represent Sure. to the best of ability, and of course, at the same time, we're required to disclose all pertinent facts for a buyer that may affect their decision to buy any property.
Right.
So it's a little bit of a gray area right now that I think we need to pay attention to and see how it unfolds. It's all brand new for the country to begin with.
Absolutely.
Even restaurants, apartment buildings, all of these things are still wrapping your heads around what is it going to be like, when that takes effect. So we need to
even things like proximity to a dispensary. So if there's a dispensary in your neighborhood, how does that affect? What's the stigma associated with that? And initially, they'll probably be fairly large. It might taper off over time, but most people, it's still not something that necessarily people with families want to be in proximity to. So how does that impact neighborhoods that are generally seen as being family-friendly, safe neighborhoods that suddenly have a legal marijuana dispensary in there? Like, how does that affect property values going forward? What's the disclosure needed around there? Does it attract crime to the neighborhood, other types of crime to the neighborhood? And it's, like you say, it's still relatively new for us, so it's going to be something that's going to be unfolding for years to come, really. And we really need people like yourself to basically to take the issue head on and really decide to really address it up front, rather than sort of sweep it under the rug and sort of be like we'll wait and see type attitude kind of thing. We got to be. I appreciate the fact that you're looking at it proactively. I think that's really the key.
It's affecting us. I mean, we're doing transactions on a regular basis, and we don't know, where it is or what it is. If we don't know, then we may have issues. So that's one of the things. But you also touched on the code of ethics. This is again coming back like 12, 13 years ago. I was involved with that. My experience back then was the diversity of all the different board or different jurisdictions because of the regulators' requirements. So each province had its own area of concern or interest, if you will, in how that was going to be rolled out across the entire country. That is going to be again. I said history repeats itself sometimes. In Ontario, we had certain model that was that required some dialogue with other provinces because of our education protocol at the time. Other provinces lacked that education, so that education needed to be ramped up. But I think, as you and I know, one of the things that we've seen more and more that we're in dire need of is more enforcement on professional standards. Regulators, they do what they do. But you and I know on the street, there are some situations that does not involve a regulator, and it's not a RICO issue, but we see some things that affect us and affect our clients that should we have more enforcement than we used to in the last several years. Particularly, we've had a tremendous swell of membership across the country. In Ontario alone, we broke 70,000 members. In a very short period of time as well, is the education that's being provided, giving them the basic understanding of how to conduct in the manner that you and I are accustomed to when we're showing houses, when leaving lights on, leaving lock boxes on open, and all these different things. So all of these things give our industry a bit of a paint with the same brush look, which is not fair to those that are diligent, that are practicing, with the highest standards of ethics. So that is going to be a conversation that needs to be definitely looked at. And 12 years ago, we did not have, I don't think we had Skype 12 years ago, 15 years ago when the last was written. We didn't have Facebook, Twitter, our cell phones were just, make a phone call, hang up, and that was the extent of it. Today, this device is basically our entire life is in it, and it's it sits there in the size of 3 by 6 inches, and has everything you need, all the resources that you need. So all of that needs to be addressed. People are advertising, promoting on social media on a regular basis. It's very difficult to monitor that. So there needs to be a little bit more of a step up to the standards that CREA is going to be developing to address a number of the changes that we've seen in the last decade. Yeah,
and I agree. I think you can make as many regulations and rules and codes of conduct as you want, but if it's not being enforced, then it's just words on paper at that point. And we are coming under increased scrutiny. Like as you mentioned, like 10, 12 years ago, a phone was just a phone. But with smartphones and technology now, and in recent discussions in a couple of real estate forums, they've been discussing homes that have security cameras. Small security cameras that are broadcasting live to the homeowners. So in terms of scrutiny, that's about as much as you can get. They are watching you while you're showing the home to a potential buyer to see what the reactions are, or to see if you are, like you said, the most basic things that we do: turn the lights off before we leave, take your shoes off when you enter the home, all the more courteous things that we should be doing. And whether you actually even show up, there's still a lot of realtors that don't show up to appointments without letting people know, and that severely inconveniences the homeowners and all that sort of stuff. So just like you mentioned, I think the enforcement angle, and even CREA to a certain extent, has taken it upon itself to sort of become a watchdog for RICO to make sure that they're enforcing. So I think that focus has really shifted in the last couple of years to really holding people accountable to the code of conduct, to REBA, and that sort of thing. So it's something that for sure will be part of the conversation going forward. I just want to take a half a second here just to tell everybody there's a bunch of people watching. Rod Doris is your biggest fan, apparently. He loves you. So he says, hey, way to go. Thanks for running. We need people like you. So there, it's a good comment from Rod there. Anybody else who is watching, please feel free to leave comments below if you have a question for Tamer. I'd be happy to mention it, but leave some comments or questions below, and we'll address them as soon as we can. There is a bit of a lag on the broadcast, so it might take a few seconds for me to ask your question, but please feel free to leave them below, and if we can't get to them during the interview, we'll be sure to circle back around and try to provide some answers at that point as well.
And I'm easy to get hold of, Tony. Let everybody know I'm a phone call away, always accessible.
Yeah, Tamer's actually, to be honest, he's right on the ball. When I gave him a shout, he got right back to me. He's also, I'll put a link as well, he's also set up a Facebook page specifically for his election campaign. So there'll be a lot of information there for anybody that wants to ask questions, what Tamer's position is on different issues facing CREA and even some of the local associations, I'm sure. He'd be happy to answer as well there. So please feel free to do that below there. So going forward, I guess one of the other issues that's being raised at the next AGM, I think, is the three-way agreement, and I know we've discussed it a little bit previously. So a number of the different boards, I believe TREB is one, and a couple of the Western boards in that have asked to basically reopen the discussion around the three-way agreement. For those that don't know, the three-way agreement is essentially between the National Association, CREA, and the provincial associations like OREA, or the BC Realtors Association, and then your local boards like the Realtors Association of Hamilton Burlington. And it's how we essentially function as organized real estate in Canada, sharing information and code of conducts and all these kind of things, especially our MLS systems and all that sort of stuff. So it's a pretty encompassing agreement. So it's a lot to sort of tackle in a relatively short interview. But generally speaking, I guess like I said, the question's been raised. They'd like to reopen discussions around how the three-way agreement works, I guess, is part of the idea. What's your take on what's happening around that? Like, what do you see? What are you hearing, I guess? What's your opinion on how it's working? I'll pretty much leave it wide open for you to kind of comment, because, like I said, it's a big issue to kind of tackle in a short interview. But I'll let you sort of let us know what you think.
Well, there's a lot of history that goes behind the creation of organized real estate. When you think about it, like, it's over 100 years ago, a bunch of real estate brokers decided, I have listings and they're not suitable for my buyers. You have listings that are probably more suitable for my buyers. So why don't we exchange the information, and we can help each other out, and we honor each other's fee structures and compensate one another in that kind of fashion. So it was really a simple creation of what they call the co-op system that eventually evolved into the MLS system as we know it today. The premise is significant for our survival in this business. I mean, this is a model that internationally is applauded by nations that say, how do you do that MLS thing? I was in a conference, believe it or not, in Dubai, and that was for ARILO. That's the Association for Real Estate Regulators and License Providers across the globe. And I met with folks representing Australia, South Africa, a lot of the United States, of course, Europe. Dubai was a host nation. And when they asked about what the MLS system, how does it work so well, they are, again, like I said, what they said, and they are envious of how successful it is. It works. It works well. It allows members that we're seeing more and more today from all different parts of Ontario to come in, show our listings, and sell it. It allows you and myself to expose and promote our listings on a number of different boards, and having 60,000 eyeballs looking at, actually be 120,000 eyeballs looking at it, to increase its attraction. So the cooperation and the MLS system in itself is obviously paramount. Now, where does that break into the next layer of organized real estate, which is a provincial association, and its significance and its importance? True, it doesn't have anything to do with the MLS activity between CREA and the local board. However, in the past, we've seen, I know, speaking of our provincial association in Ontario, for example, has been a significant education provider, and we know that that's coming down to a close fairly soon. And that was a significant component of the Ontario Real Estate Association's activities. So, licensing and education is, as you know,
absolutely.
Every member has to go through it and continue to go through it in continuing education, a number of these different things, and we've seen that chunked off every few years, and we are where we are today. So then it comes down to the role of what is it that Ontario Real Estate Association, as an example, has as functionality. We can easily say that, anybody can take on advocacy. We can hire advocates to lobby on our behalf in private sectors. They have standard forms. You can get any company that can produce standard forms. It's not rocket science. So that particularly, I shouldn't say that. It is a lot of hard work by CREA. Sorry, CREA, if I said that. I didn't mean to offend you, but it is a significant role that is being provided right now by CREA. When you look at the lobbying efforts, they are local. And I'll give you an example of some of the lobbying steps that have taken place over the last several years. I know that as a chamber chair, we hosted our mayor of Burlington at one point in time. I hope he's listening. And at that point in time, there were meetings of the municipalities, and they were talking about, look at what Toronto's doing with the land transfer tax application on all resale homes. And they thought, that's a significant amount of funding. Is that an option that other municipalities can consider? So this was addressed at one chamber meeting, and I thought, well, wow, are we going to see that? Unroll in Burlington, eventually Hamilton, St. Catharines, and London, and all the other cities in Ontario. So I kind of, brought it up in a conversation at one of the meetings, and eventually it looked like it was gaining momentum. So it wasn't long after that, and there was an army of real estate people that said, you can't do that across the province of Ontario. And guess what? They listen. Politicians listen. And it was all of the call to actions, all of the activity that took place. So that was a huge success for Ontario Realtors.
Yeah. And similarly, recently, we just announced at the reality conference there, the CREA was significantly involved in striking down the home energy audits, the mandatory home energy audits, the HERD legislation that was being proposed. Didn't come into being, thankfully. Would have put a significant burden on home sellers. It was mainly through the actions of the provincial association really rallying the troops, I guess, and really lobbying on behalf of realtors and homeowners to get that legislation stopped. So they do still play a very critical role, especially in the advocacy arena, I guess. And I think that it more so now that, because CREA has shed the education component, or will very shortly. I think they're shifting focus, and their most recent sort of mandate that they put out, I think within the past week, we sort of saw the email come out from CREA sort of outlining what their 5-year plan is that shift towards advocacy on behalf of realtors, on behalf of homeowners, and just the real estate industry in general. Where do you see, or I guess, the role of being an advocate? I mean, you obviously have been. As far as CREA is concerned, like, how important is it? How important is your background as an advocate? How does that inform the way that you approach the role of director and that sort of thing going forward? Where do you see, I guess, the role of CREA in terms of what's it do for us? I guess, I mean, when you really get down to it, like, people, as an everyday realtor, I mean, we're on the streets, like you say, we're helping people buy and sell houses and stuff, and sometimes we lose sight of what our associations do for us. So what do you see, like, you're going to become a director, you've been involved with CREA for a very long time. What's the mandate, and how does advocacy fit within the overall mandate of CREA from your perspective?
Well, as far as CREA it's continuing on all of the efforts of advocacy from each provincial level to address the national issues at large. And then, like I said before, what happens in BC is eventually going to find its way to Alberta and eventually going to jump over to Ontario and spread to, all the different provinces. So advocacy is advocacy. What we do locally, and that's what I was initially addressing, is the municipal level has a role for advocacy. The provincial level has a role for advocacy, and the national level also has its role for advocacy. They all tie in together, because what happens in Toronto is what happened in Vancouver eventually came to Toronto, as we saw recently, and vice versa. So that can spread into all different communities right across the country. There is strength in numbers. If you want to go fast, you can run alone. If you want to go far, you run together. And as a group for national association, if we all bind together, we're going to be heard a lot louder than if we are fractured into miniature boards or associations. And don't take me wrong, there are some. I'm representing the second largest board in Ontario, the Realtor Association Hamilton. Association in Burlington is one of the largest boards in the country, as well as being the second in Ontario. And in my opinion, it has its own issues that need to be addressed at a local level. But still, when that happens, it's easy to draw on the provincial association and eventually the national associations. That's why we have PAC days. That's why our representatives go to Toronto to lobby at Queen's Park, and the same representatives go to Ottawa to lobby for national issues. So it all ties in together. Now, what is it? I think when you started talking about the three-way agreement, is it relevant today as it was when it was created? And I would have to answer, no, it's not. It is different. And it's different in a way that it needs to define or redefine each individual role. What is the role of the provincial association in comparison to the national and the local board? Those need to be defined. We need to reduce duplication. Bottom line is, we need to talk about it. We can't go in with a position of a mindset that this is what needs to be done. We need to go in and discuss how do we make it more efficient, more effective, more cost savings for our members of the entire Canadian Real Estate Association. Mm-hmm. That's my position, and this is one of the reasons why I thought I need to bring that conversation to the table, and hopefully I'm successful in my race for that role.
Yeah, and absolutely, I agree. I think, like you said, the role of the realtor has changed significantly. Generally speaking, we help people buy and sell houses and negotiate prices, so that sort of has stayed the same, but the way we go about doing it has changed significantly over the past even 10 years. Like you said, phones used to be phones. And now we have everything in our pockets. Brokerages are providing, depending on the brokerage you're with, are providing greater levels of training and education on their own, which may not have been available previously. Then CREA is, again, shifting its role. Like, it's not going to be the educator past 2020. So it needs to redefine what it's doing. And then, just meeting the needs of realtors in terms of advanced education and knowledge around things like social media, marketing practices, what's happening. And I think just becoming, again, the role of the realtor is just changing as technology advances, and people like companies like Zillow, as we discussed during the CREA conference, and others that are coming down the pipe, people like Amazon and Apple and Google, they're making inroads and they're noticing the real estate industry. For whatever reason, they see it as a profit center. So they're making inroads and wanting to look at what they can do in terms of real estate. Even Facebook has sort of a more enhanced real estate sales section of itself. So just the general landscape of real estate is changing, and the role that the real estate agent or the realtor is going to play in that landscape is going to be different. So we need different things from our associations. So I agree completely with what you're saying. Just the willingness to have the discussion, I think, is the most important thing. To be able to willingly sit down at the table and say, hey, we need to talk about this. We can't just leave it the way it is. We really need to look at, are we doing the best that we can do for our members? Are we doing it, like you say, in the most cost-effective manner that we can be doing it? How can we deliver services in a better way that meets the needs of our realtors and ultimately meets the needs of their clients, which are the Canadian homeowners? So I really do appreciate you bringing that up. That's an extremely important point, at least in my mind, in terms for anybody that wants to be running to be a director or any other member of the association, that willingness to have discussions. And to have discussions, not debates. I really hate debates. Debates, debates are what lawyers do in court. You pick a side, I pick a side, and we just argue until somebody says who wins, kind of thing. But discussions are actually useful. We can actually trade ideas. We can actually accept each other's ideas at some point if they make sense, rather than just debating and fighting all the time, which seems to be the way a lot of conversations go these days, unfortunately. So, I think we've been talking for quite a while. I know we don't have a lot of questions, so I think we're doing a good job of explaining your position and everything like that. Yes. Yeah. So are there any other points that you'd like to bring up in terms of the campaign? Like, the election's coming up fairly soon. I believe it's in April. The date. 15th. Yeah, April 15th is kind of date escapes me, but there you are to save me. Mm-hmm. So it's coming up fairly soon. Who is entitled or who is voting for the director position? Like, is it? I just, again, the mechanics of it escape me. haven't been that involved with it. So who actually gets to vote for the position of regional director?
Yeah, that's a very critical question, because since we posted that election page yesterday, all kinds of people saying, "I'll vote for you." Well, I wish they all had voted, because I think it would have had plenty of votes that'd be a shoe-in by now. However, voting delegates are determined by each board, has a number of votes based on the size of the membership, and each board will be assigned, X number of votes, like whether it's 2, 3, or what have you. Those are usually cast by the president, president-elect, vice president, depending on the number of votes that each board will have. The executive officer, and it's only for the province of Ontario that gets to vote at the election for the position that I'm running for. There is another position, another election for director at large, and that's the one that's held the next day on the 16th of April at the AGM for CREA. It's the one, but regional elections are held the evening before, sometime, and I'm sure keep an ear open and an eye open for those voting delegates that'll be going to Ottawa, and the place and the time that will be determined by CREA. The executive officers will receive that information. We'll share it with their board of directors. I am reaching out to a number of presidents and EOs, and at the present time, I have a very busy month ahead of me to explain to them why I'm running and see what issues that they may want answered or addressed, bringing questions very much such as what you've done. I think this video is going to help answer a lot of those questions for people in advance. And I've been speaking to many of the board presidents already, and I'm pleased with the response that I'm receiving thus far, and I still have a lot of work to do. It is not going to be an easy election. Bottom line is, we have two good, solid candidates. Ontario is going to be a winner, and CREA will be a winner regardless of the outcome. I do hope that I do bring a position that boards and associations see that can be beneficial to have me serve them back on the national level. And I'm eager to do the job. It's something that I look at as an opportunity to help more, bringing the number of years of the practice, like I said, in the field, in the trenches, and bring it to the table, and the policymakers and the officials that we hire at those associations to help develop the policy that is going to help our members grow their business. I think that's the most important thing.
Exactly. And I think, so basically, as a member of an association, like I said, I personally am not going to be voting. That's not the way it works, but I can contact the president of my association. I can be active in, I know for the Real Estate Association of Hamilton Burlington, we have a Facebook group specifically for us. so we can be somewhat vocal in the group there and offer our support. For yourself or for the other candidate involved as well. But we can still basically take part in it. We can make our voices heard, and we can let our association know what our preferences are. So even though we're not casting a ballot directly, we can still be a part of the process. So it's not something we just sort of throw our hands up in the air and just leave it to other people. We can be directly involved either by picking up the phone or getting onto social media and just talking about what we want to see happen with the future of our association, either municipally, provincially, or nationally. So I think that's the important part, is just to be involved. Otherwise, you can't complain when the results come out if you didn't help make the decision. So that's the same as any kind of politics.
Yeah. And I think if there are any viewers that do not have a vote from any part of the province, or in fact, I think some of the friends that I have are nationwide right now. Some of the past leaders of organized real estate in Canada, mm-hmm. And I think if there's anyone that knows a voting delegate at any level from any of the boards that are going to be casting their vote in Ontario, that they would reach out to that individual. Like, I know you're president, so do I. I already spoke with him, and I'm pleased to say that Realtor Association of Hamilton Burlington is behind Tamer Fahmi, and I've received a letter endorsing that by our CEO and our president. And it's no different from any member of any other board in Ontario to reach out to the president, voting delegate, EO, CEO, whatever the case may be, and say, you know what, it's going to be a tough election. What do you think of that Tamer Fahmi guy? And if they don't know, I'm reaching out to all of the boards anyway, and I'm receiving callbacks with welcoming remarks and comments. So the engagement of the boards and associations so far in the first week that I started ringing the phones has been. I'm pleasantly surprised that it's as well received as it is. I do know that our CREA president Andrew Peck, when he was addressing the assembly in Toronto a couple of weeks ago, he mentioned about the elections, and he encouraged those voting delegates, when they get a call from a candidate that's running for the position, please pick up the phone, return the call. It's email or whatever. Listen to what they have to say so you can make an informed decision. That is the important thing, and that's basically what I ask any viewer that's watching this right now that does not have a vote, is to reach out to someone that they know that does, and have a conversation with them. Suggest for them to call me, and I'll be more than happy to share my platform, my thoughts with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's something that we, as a minimum, hope to do for our clients, is we help them purchase a home or sell a home, and we're just trying to inform them and give them the information so they can make that informed decision at the end of the day as to whether proceed with the purchase or how to go about selling their homes. So it's not really a stretch to make sure that our voting delegates make the same effort and become informed about the candidates available, what their platforms are, rather than just sort of picking a name out of a hat kind of thing. And I know, like I said, you're extremely available to answer questions. So we'll put the link up to your election page. So if people watching this or later today watching this video have questions, they can reach out to you specifically. So that if they're not really sure, if they haven't had a question in their mind answered by whatever we've covered today, they can reach out to you directly, get the answers, and make a decision as to whether or not to support you. And then reach out to their delegates at that point and say, hey, you know what, I did have a chance to talk to Tamer either by email or on social media or directly on the phone, and I think he's pretty solid. I think he's the guy that you should go with. So hopefully that conversation takes place. I encourage anybody to reach out. You're very easy to talk to. I mean, that's all I can say. I've known you for a number of years, and you've always been really friendly and welcoming to me. We've been out there for right now. You are currently the broker of record at Keller Williams Edge Realty in Burlington, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Keller Williams Edge Home Realty. It's It's our continuing company from 1989, and we've been incorporated into an independent corporation model, which has been a very successful move for us, and we're very pleased with. And by the way, just so everybody knows, I have an Army qualified salespeople on my team that will be carrying on my business while I'm performing my duties when elected.
Yeah, so that was one of the questions I was going to ask too. How does that work? But yes.
Yeah,
excellent.
So I'm very solid with a lot of experience. I think combined is it 163? I think 163 years of experience on my team.
Well, there you go.
That's actually before the creation of CREA.
Well, there you go. Exactly. And yourself, like I said, you've been in. I know you've received the award from RAB that you've been in the business for over 40 years. So you've seen a lot of things come and go in the real estate industry, a lot of changes, and helped guide it a lot. Like being involved, like you said, at RAB, at all different levels, at RAB, at CREA, and at CREA. So we really appreciate everything that you've done so far, all the service that you've done. I wish you the best of luck as far as the election is concerned. I have full confidence in you. I have no issues. I think you're a pretty straightforward person, and I like what you're saying. I like what you're seeing as far as the history of or the future of CREA goes. I have to talk to the other candidate too, just to be fair. Like I said, make the informed decision. But like I said, you have my full confidence as far as the members from RAB are concerned. I'm glad that they're throwing their full support behind you. And like I said, I just wish you the best of luck. And we'll follow up with you. Like whether
I'd like to make one final comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
I see a leader in the making right now myself. So as I was encouraged by a past president of our association back in the 80s, one day I will see you at the helm of the Realtor Association Hamilton, Burlington, and perhaps beyond. You did a terrific job with this interview. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's a great platform to get to know more about the issues that are going to affect the way we're going to earn our living.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the kind words. So hopefully we'll see what the future holds for both of us. We'll leave.
Well, you'll always have my support.
There you go. Awesome, dude. Thank you so much again. I will. I'm just going to tweak this little thing here so that you can go off and carry on your day. I'm sure there's a ton of people waiting for you. But again, thank you for joining us. All the best of luck. And again, we'll follow up with you, hopefully as future director. And even if not, just talking about real estate and the markets and all that kind of stuff. I always appreciate your input and your insight. And that's about it. So have a great rest of the day, and we'll talk soon.
You too, Tony. Thank you very much.
Take care. So that was Tamer Fahmi, the broker of record at Keller Williams Edge in Burlington, Ontario. He is running to be the regional director for Ontario on the Canadian Real Estate Association. As mentioned, the average realtor like us, we don't get to vote directly. It's all through our boards and associations, but you can make your voice heard. So if you are interested in Tamer, we'll be putting up links to his election page so you can get more information about him and look at his resume. He has a long history in real estate here in Hamilton, Burlington, spanning back over 40 years, and been involved almost since day one with all our associations, with the creation of our code of conduct, and a number of other charitable organizations all throughout Hamilton, Burlington. So he's been really involved in the community right from day one. He's a kind-hearted, good man to speak to, and if you want to know anything about real estate, he is not a bad guy to know. So he's that great guy there. Thanks to Tamer for tuning in. So thanks all for tuning in today. I am Tony, the Geeky Agent from RE/MAX here in Hamilton, and this is RE/MAX Geek TV, at least my version of it. Hopefully we'll be able to continue these types of interviews going forward. We're just looking for interesting people that we can talk to and have some fun with, and just maybe be a little bit more informed at the end of the day. So if you are looking for me online, you can find me on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram at the Geeky Agent. I am also on Snapchat, Twitter, Pinterest, and Tumblr, and a bunch of other places, even the PlayStation Network as the Geeky Agent, but mainly on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. If you want to contact me directly, get some more information about Tamer or about the Hamilton real estate market, you can find me at 289-237-9896. You can email me, Tony, at thegeekyagent.com, or if you want to just check me out online, find me at thegeekyagent.com, the website, or go to hamiltonlifestylesearch.com if you are looking for a home in the Hamilton area. So again, that is it for me today. hopefully it is warmer where you are than where I am. It is cold. It's been snowing again for the last couple of days. My birthday is next month at the end of the month, and it snowed on my birthday plenty of times, so I'm not too overly optimistic about us not getting any more snow, but I wish it would go away. I really do. So thanks again, y'all, for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful day. I love y'all. I really do. And as always, I'll talk to you soon. Bye for now.